and welcome to the Healthy Half Hour podcast. We are your hosts, Richard and Karen Inslee.
The Healthy Half Hour podcast is your resource for all things healthy, and we will be discussing how to make nutrition, fitness and lifestyle choices work for you.
We will be sharing our own personal insights along with research gathered from working in the health and fitness industry for the past 10 years.
Our show is brought to you by the 7 Day Shred, which can be found at 7dayshred.com, and please feel free to visit our podcast website, which can be found at healthyhalfhourpodcast.com.
And now on to today's show.
Hi, we're back again. We've had a little bit of a break and good reason. We always start the show with like, hey, what have we been up to? Well, I actually had to make a bit of an impromptu visit back home to deal with some health issues for my mum and my stepdad. So I flew back to England just over a week ago, and it was in on the Friday and, well, back out a week ago today, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So,
Had a week alone. Bachelorette.
Bachelorette?
Yes.
Everybody thought that you were going to, like, starve and kept inviting you round for supper.
Big boy me, I managed it.
Which was quite entertaining. And
I managed it except for one thing.
Gravy. Yeah. We determined that the reason that you keep me around is I've not led on how to make gravy, so can't do roast Sunday supper without gravy. So
I'm not completely Google incompetent, so I'm keeping you around for other reasons.
So it's been quite an interesting week. This week it took me a little bit longer to recover from the jet lag. My brain felt a bit like mushy peas actually last Saturday, the morning after I got back. And
everybody's Googling mushy peas.
Mushy peas, yeah, mushy peas. I did have mushy peas when I was in England.
Oh, you traitor.
Yeah, I know. I had them without you. But it's actually like what happened while I was away actually ties in really perfectly to today's topic on the podcast. So I'll let you chip in, and then I'll kind of.
Well, that's kind of you. Yeah. Thank you.
And then
I'm a chipper.
I'll interject with some of my thoughts, and obviously what happened to me as well. It will become apparent. So.
Oh, okay. There you were keeping us all in suspense.
I know.
It's so like at the end of the last one, we kind of didn't know where we were going to go, and a few people. Again, I was talking to, and we had an email. In the week about it, or was a Facebook post, one or the other, basically asking about timed eating and intermittent fasting. What's the difference between timed eating, intermittent fasting, and would we kind of go over it? And again, we've done this in snippets in other podcasts, so we're going to kind of put it all under one umbrella today and go over the different sorts of things you can do, and again, the health benefits, metabolic benefits, and other things that kind of go along with not eating, really. So, I mean, with that, we will just get on with what really is timed eating and intermittent fasting. So, I mean, as they kind of come across in their titles, you basically don't eat. And really, there's different sorts of timed eating and different sorts of intermittent fasting. And I know they've been, like I say, banded as different things. Really, they're pretty much the same. So there's several different ways of doing it in different types. I mean, 16-8 is quite popular right now, which is where you fast for 16 hours and then you eat for 8 hours. So you eat all of your calories in an 8-hour window. And again, if you're eating 1,400, 1,500 calories a day, then the goal is in that 8 hours to eat all those calories.
And people actually think like, oh, that's a long time to go without eating. But not really. I mean, if you had your supper, your evening meal at 7 o'clock, and then you got up at 6 and had breakfast at 7 a.m., I mean, that's 12 hours gone already. So,
yeah, but you wouldn't have your breakfast at 12 a.m. It's at 7 a.m.
7 a.m.
No, you'd have your breakfast at 11.
Well, no, but I'm just saying that, like, people think 16 hours is a long time, but I mean, 12 hours, like, is easily doable. So they think, like, they wouldn't be able to
suffer for the other 4.
Well, yeah, but it's actually not that difficult.
No, it's not. It's and again, it can sometimes. I said, well, I've mentioned it on other podcasts, and I've done it before. And for me, yeah, sometimes, especially if you're racing out the door in the morning, and one of the big questions we go, "Oh, I hadn't got time for breakfast." Great, don't bother with it.
Yeah,
but breakfast is the most important meal of the day.
Is it?
No. Said people who were selling breakfast.
Cereal.
I think
Kellogg's
it's actually, I don't know if it's actually Kellogg's. It was one of the cereal manufacturers or someone that actually said it was the most important meal of the day. And even like people go from cereal to like eggs and bacon. Actually, the eggs and bacon is a really good breakfast. Actually came from eggs and pork producers in the 50s in the States. So, I mean, eat what you want for breakfast. I mean, breakfast is break the fast, which is what we're talking about today. So whenever you stop fasting, you're breaking that fast. So break fast is break the fast.
And tonight we're actually going to be having curry for supper. And
where's this going?
Well, on about it doesn't matter what you actually have for breakfast, just have food. It doesn't have to be breakfast food. And any time that we have leftover curry, I can guarantee that I'll have spoonfuls of cold curry the next morning at breakfast. So it really doesn't matter what you eat.
Yeah, I have to live with it. Another type again is the 5-2. This was done by a British doctor called Michael Mosley, and it's eat regularly for 5 days, and on the other 2 days, women would eat about 500 calories and men would eat about 600 calories. So again, not a total fast on those days, and I guess you could spread those calories across the day. So more of a kind of partial fasting because you're only at very, very low calories on those days as well. So, I mean, again, it's just another way of doing it and just depends how it fits with your schedule. 24-hour fasts you can do. Do them 1 or 2 days a week. Obviously, you need a break or 2 days in between those fasts. So it's kind of a different method of doing it. And again, on those 2 days of fasting, it would just be water. Other ways of kind of fasting is 1 meal a day. So you can just do 1 large meal a day. Again, if you're on 1,500 calories of food, it's pretty tough to eat 1,500 calories a day. So especially, again, if you were kind of looking towards a carbohydrate, protein-based diet with lower fat, obviously a higher fat diet, it is easier to get 1,500 calories in 1 meal. And with that, again, less volume because of that 9 calories per gram with fat. So again, there's not as much volume.
And I just said that about my trip back to the UK and that it would all make sense. Well, I was obviously 6 hours ahead of what I am obviously here at home in Winnipeg. And it wasn't a vacation. I was there to do a job and to organise a lot of things for the family. So I would get up in the morning, which was 6 hours ahead of what my normal time was. And I literally would be out of the door. I stayed with your parents, didn't I? Mm-hmm. And I said to them before I went that they wouldn't see me that much. And I literally was out of the door, UK 9 a.m. time, probably getting back to your mum and dad's about 5:30 to have supper. And for virtually, apart from one day where I invited myself to some friends for breakfast, we always do go there, don't we, for them to breakfast. I was literally eating 1 meal a day, and I would eat just at night. And yeah, a few times I was hungry throughout the day, but I didn't die. And I was actually telling one of my friends today about it. She owns a health food store in Winnipeg, and she says, "Oh, that's not good. You can't just eat once a day." And I'm like, well, I actually probably didn't take on all of the calories that I would normally do, but it worked for me. I was fine. And there was one night, the last night I was there, my mother-in-law made pasta, and I don't usually eat pasta at all. And I came home even later that night, and I looked at the plate, and she followed me into the kitchen. She says, "Oh, is it okay?" I says, "It's absolutely perfect because I haven't had to cook it, and I didn't have to cook all week. It was wonderful." So, but I literally had a whole week of just eating once a day, and it really didn't bother me. But obviously my body clock was slightly out as well, which...
And that kind of segues into a couple of the things, again, that people do like about fasting is, one, it's say, flexible.
It's easy.
And no prep. So, I mean, it's you've got the uncomfortableness. Sometimes, again, people think it's uncomfortable of being hungry. And I did a talk a week or so ago for a local gym on nutrition and just kind of the basics of nutrition. And one of the questions I asked at the end of the audience, is it okay to be hungry? And we had about a 50-50 of yes and no. And I said to him, yes, it's okay to be hungry. I mean, it's just a signal that's sent to your brain just that says that my stomach's empty.
And also, if you're kept busy, it kind of takes your mind off that being hungry. I mean, I was go, go, go all day and getting home at 5 o'clock at night to your parents. And so the only time that it really starts to feel uncomfortable is, like, say, if you're bored really and you're not keeping yourself like busy.
And you got time to think about it a little bit. So again, if it's at work, I mean, hunger is what hunger is. It's not the end of the world. And again, there's the adage of, especially like from normally I think the dietitian point of view, and again, everybody loves the snack thing at the minute, is 5 meals a day. So 3 meals and 2 snacks. And I mean, people just get obsessed with it. And there's the adage of, 5 smaller frequent meals or 6 smaller frequent meals are better for you because it spreads the metabolic. Good luck and finding a study that kind of proves that, because it's not been proved. 2 meals, 1 meal, 3 meals, 5 meals. It doesn't make a difference to you, really, and you won't store more body fat just because you eat once or twice a day.
And the only time that you really have to maybe eat a little bit more frequently is if you have blood sugar issues, because, like, your mum gets a little bit lightheaded and dizzy, doesn't she? If she doesn't, or if you're hyperglycemic. Yeah,
if you get poor blood sugar regulation, that's always the caveat to the smaller meal thing. Plus also, I mean, a lot of this from the health and fitness point of view comes from the bodybuilding world. And if those guys are trying to cram 6, 7, 8,000 calories in, there's no way they can do it in 2 meals a day. So they have to eat little and often, again, just to keep that protein intake up and also that caloric intake up, especially if they're bulking and want to put muscle on. So again, it's not necessarily need to eat those small frequent meals. One thing, again, that's a thing that can affect women more than men, because again, fasting tends to do a little bit better with men than women. But again, there are some women outliers out there that do very, very well with it. And I mean, we'd always say give it a try for sure, is it does add a stress to the body. And from a hormonal point of view, women don't tend to soak up that stress as well as men do. So again, look at your life, look at what you're doing. I mean, if you've got a lot of stress on at the minute, I mean, you may have a loved one or someone close to you that's not very well and you're having to look after them, or you've got tight deadlines at work or something for the next couple of weeks. And so you're already in a stress state anyway. So jumping into doing intermittent fasting and stressing yourself even more, it might not be the best for you now. So kind of, if it's something you're considering doing, just pick your time and pick a time that's better for you. Don't pick the ideal time, because you'll be waiting from now till the end of time, because there's never really a perfectly ideal time, but just be a little bit smart as if you're going to kind of jump in at some point. The other, again, one I just looked at, I got a bit of a list I made up with the fast, and the last fast, again, which we did a podcast on, is water fasting. So water fasting really is more than kind of 48 hours plus. And I mean, people have gone to the extreme of like 20, 30 days doing it. And I mean, we've said before about the extreme of the medically supervised water fast that the guy did for over a year and lost all that weight in the UK in the 70s. And again, that's just outliers. That's experimental.
And that was doctor supervision, and he did have a lot of weight to lose.
He did have help with it, yeah. And I mean, I've done 5-day water fast before just to see kind of how things go. And it kind of gets tough early on, but later on it gets a little easier. But that's something, again, I just experimented with to try.
And we've mentioned about the modified water fast that I've done. So the modified water fast is where you have black coffee, herbal teas, some chicken broth, just water or whatever. And we've mentioned about ketosis a lot, and the keto diet over the last few months. And a lot of coaches, and I use that word very loosely, will recommend loose coaches, yeah. No, I use the term loosely, because a lot of the times when it comes to any particular protocol, especially when people are trying to get into ketosis, and You've got coaches advising people, oh, you can't have this, you can't have that, you can't knock yourself out of ketosis. And people say, oh, well, I just want to have like this like pizza at the weekend. Oh, no, you can't do that because it'll take you days to get back into ketosis. Well, to be honest, the fastest way to get into ketosis is actually water fasting. And I was actually going to be doing a Facebook Live video on this regarding, yeah, and the fact that our blood work, when we had it done a few months ago, our urine test came back as abnormal. And we were actually quite happy about that because it actually said that we were in ketosis because we'd obviously done a slightly extended water fast than what,
extended is a good word.
Yeah, slightly more extended than the 14 hours that they recommend. Yeah. We did a little bit longer. I mean, I think it was 24:36 maybe.
Well, did blood work on Friday mid-morning, and the last time I ate was Wednesday night. So
basically we went in and did our like urine test and blood test, and we actually had, like you say, a slightly extended water fast, and our blood work came back that we were in ketosis. And so people who are following a ketogenic diet and they've got coaches or people advising them, you cannot do this, you can't stray off the plan, you can't have like whole food carbohydrates because, it's going to wreck everything. It's not. I mean, if you want to go out and have one meal because it's a special occasion or for whatever reason you want, then a slightly extended water fast or modified water fast will bring you back into ketosis very, very quickly. And to be honest, we follow a more paleo diet and whole foods diet. So we do eat starchy vegetables and we can get into ketosis very, very easily, even though we have starches.
And that's, again, like you say, it takes about 24 hours. But one of the reasons why we can get kind of into ketosis fairly quickly is because we've done it before. And the body will recognize what's going off, and then it will not take us too long to do it. Mm-hmm. So there's a fat adaptation time. And that fat adaptation, basically what that means is majority of the time, again, with a standard Western diet, we're just burning sugars. So the majority of the diet is from sugary foods or processed foods or even kind of high starches. And again, processed starches as well. So we tend to eat a lot of sugar, and the body gets kind of used to that. And then when we kind of shift over, maybe stop eating or maybe go towards like a ketogenic style thing or just doing the fasting, then it takes the body a little while to kind of get used to doing it. And sometimes people get what they call keto flu, whereas they feel like crap for probably 2 or 3 days after starting because, again, their body is trying to figure out what it's going to do and how it's kind of going to start that fat burning as opposed to that sugar burning. So, again, that's something that takes a little bit of time to get over, but that, again, it is something, it's uncomfortable. And again, being uncomfortable, people kind of back out of doing it sometimes or don't want to do it. So, again, just be prepared. It's going to take you a little bit of time. So, why do we produce ketones? It's an evolutionary thing. Because, again, think 10,000 years ago, there wasn't a Safeway on every corner. We didn't have ready meals all the time. And that fasting was something we had to live with. We had to live with it purely because, again, food can sometimes be very, very scarce. So it's not something the body doesn't know how to cope with, and it's not something that's alien to the body. And again, there's a lot of different health benefits that can obviously happen when you start to fast. And again, using whichever method you want to use from the ones we said earlier on, I mean, you will lose body fat because now, again, if you're not putting all those sugars in the body, you're going to lose body fat because the body is going to want to burn that fat. If you're type 2 diabetic, type 2 diabetes is reversible once you start dropping those sugars down. The reason why it's reversing is because you tend to regulate insulin more normally now. And again, you're promoting insulin sensitivity. So you can Google insulin sensitivity, and we've spoke about it on previous podcasts. But again, you're normalizing the system. You're normalizing what's happening in your body. If you've been diagnosed with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, again, you're basically going to improve that condition purely by utilizing the fats in the body as opposed to the liver trying to struggle with them. Metabolic syndrome is going to improve. So again, metabolic syndrome is an umbrella of like high blood pressure, non-alcoholic fatty liver, type 2 diabetes and everything. So obviously once all the components of that syndrome start to improve, then the syndrome itself goes away. Blood pressure will normalize. High triglycerides will go down. Because again, your body started to utilize that fat and it won't be floating around in the system. Cholesterol will drop. But I mean, there with that, and that's not necessarily the same with everybody. The caveat on that is, again, when we did our blood sugar after our fast a couple of months ago, my cholesterol actually all went up and my doctor was a little bit concerned and we kind of had a chat about it and I kind of told him what we was going to do. And he says, well, do it again come and do the test again in 6 months and we'll have a look what it is. So basically I ended up with another blood test out of the whole thing because I went that way. Is that unhealthy to have your cholesterol high? No, it's just my body's reaction to what was kind of happening with fasting for that little bit of time. So obviously everything heightened up because I've now got more fat circulating in my system now because the body's utilizing those fats for energy and muscle repair and tissue repair. So my doctor's just covering all of his bets. So really, I mean, he's just going to get me in there just to have another look. And when we do that, I'll come back to it and I'll let you know the results of when I was eating normally in inverted commas.
and also when it comes to being in ketosis and, like say, micromanaging your diet and being a food Nazi, and when you've reversed conditions, whether it's using paleo, keto, whatever like formula that you're using, it doesn't mean that you can't go off plan and that if you go out for a meal and like eat a carrot, a potato, a piece of like pizza,
Carrots.
like some starch, like it's not going to completely derail you. It's not like you're allergic to a product. It's just you want to have this particular like food, you want to go out and enjoy it, and it's not going to derail everything. If you go out and have like a higher starch meal, as long as it's whole foods or even if it's a pizza, it's not going to completely turn you into a type 2 diabetic again. It's just going to dysregulate your blood sugar slightly. But also this week, since being home, my starch intake has actually been a little bit higher. No particular reason, but you know, we had potatoes the other night and like I've thrown like carrots and peas into like my instant pot. And just being back into a normal routine this week, I was just interested to do my blood sugar this morning. And considering I'd actually had, like say, higher starches this week in the form of obviously vegetables, like not any like glutinous like processed carbohydrates, but I was 5.5. So I mean, my body tolerates, I can get into ketosis very easily. My body tolerates like higher starches in the form of whole foods, and I can stay at a healthy blood sugar level. My blood glucose levels are ideal. And like, if any of you follow Rob Wolf and his wife, they did a carb tolerance test. Oh, maybe a year ago, possibly. I don't know. When was it? But they actually did it where they both had like the same starches and carbohydrates, didn't they? And then afterwards they checked their blood sugar levels, and his wife.
Oh, tolerate. Yeah, she's from an Italian background, so she tolerated it way better than he did. And yeah, so he did it for his latest book. And I mean, there's a lot in his latest book about it. And I'll just stick my head around the corner and see. The name of the book is, I'm
Wired
blanking.
to Eat.
Well, that's it. Wired to Eat. There we go. I just saw it. So in his book.
If Rob Wolf ever listens to this, he's going to go, I can't believe you forgot. Like,
I can't believe he doesn't owe me money for helping him sell books. But in that Wired to Eat, again, that's one thing they do, is one of the tests that they do sort of thing is using a blood glucose meter, like Karen said, and you can actually see what carbs you tolerate and what carbs you don't tolerate. Yes, it's a lot of work, but if you want to know what spikes your blood sugar and what doesn't, again, just purely from a regular eating point of view, as opposed to even just being in ketosis, I mean, there's a lot of information you can get, and you can get yourself a little list of things that really spike your blood sugar and things that don't. Stick with the things that don't, because again, you're not bugging your insulin so much, and you're not promoting that fat storage.
And like I say, continuing that blood sugar issue is that a lot of people say, oh, you're not allowed to have any high starches. You've got to keep them under 20 grams or whatever. But if your body tolerates them, then, and you're at a healthy weight, your like health is like on track, then don't kind of like punish yourself and don't beat yourself up over it, and don't let somebody tell you that, oh, it's our way or no way. Like, you know, this is the only formula that is for everybody, because it's not, because one, like we always say, there's no one diet fits all. Everybody's biochemically and genetically unique. And we've mentioned before about Rhonda Patrick and the PPAR gene. And if you don't possess that gene, a high-fat ketogenic diet is the worst thing in the world for you. But again, you need to go to someone where like 23andme.com or .ca or .co.uk to actually find out whether you have this. But unless you spend the $400-500 to have that test, you don't know. So there's a lot of people go ketogenic diet. They get frustrated because like it's not having the right effect on them. But it might be that your body can't tolerate those high fats, and that's just how your genetics are, and you can't change that. So, you know, taking the advice of a ketogenic coach or a diet coach saying like, oh, you've got to do this and you'll lose weight and this will reverse your type 2 diabetes. If you've not got this PPAR gene, it's a moot point.
Yeah, again, it's not necessarily going to help you lose weight for sure. And again, you might just feel unwell on it. But it's like anything. I mean, like say with the different sorts of fasting, the 16-8, the 5-2, the 24-hour, the multiple days, do what works for you. Do what feels right for you. Mm-hmm. Like I say, there's always that time period, especially if it's something you've not done before, where you might have to just get used to it and get your body set up. But your body knows what to do. All the mechanisms are in there. And like Karen says, the caveat, obviously, if you do have blood sugar regulation issues, don't go around and then keep fainting everywhere like those goats do, where they just fall down.
They're cute, though.
Yeah, so don't do that. And again, if you look at kind of a balancing scale system, and I mean, if you put fed on one side and fasted on the other, I mean, on the fed side, I mean, you're a lot of the times, again, especially with a standard American diet, it's higher insulin, higher glucose, you're a sugar burner. And the tendency is, again, if you overeat a little bit, the tendency is you're still going to store fat rather than burn it. If you look at the fasted side, your insulin's going to be lower, your glucose is going to be lower, you're going to tend to release more fat into the body system, and that released fat again is going to be burned, because that's what you're going to use for energy store, and that's what your liver does. Your body, when that circulating fat is going around in your bloodstream, your liver's pulling it out there and converting it into ketones, because ketones are a very, very usable energy store that the body can use, and your brain can use it. And I think we've said on podcasts before that the brain only needs 20% of the brain only needs sugar. So I mean, your body can produce sugar from other things, especially like the glycerol backbone from the fat itself. So there's little bits of sugar floating around, and that 20%, it can scavenge from around the body to run the brain. The other 80% of your brain will run quite happily on ketones. So like I say, all these evolutionary mechanisms, they're all in your body, and they're all waiting to be switched on. And like Karen says, the quickest way to get into, if ketosis is something you're looking to do, and I mean, Pete, you're flapping about doing it with your diet, just stop eating for a little while. And I mean, really, again, this is what the whole podcast is about, is just say that timed eating or intermittent fasting, pick your poison and see what works for you.
And also, it's like you said earlier, it's got to work, obviously, with your lifestyle, whatever. And when I was in the UK, I mean, normally we'll probably say twice a day, really, won't we? I mean, if you're out on a busy day, you might take some extra stuff in the morning. But, I mean, really, we kind of have one meal in the evening. We'll probably eat once during the day. But my time in the UK, I mean, my circumstances were that I ate once a day, and that was it. And that worked for me, and I was fine with it. But obviously, if you've got a really boring, mundane job, and like all you're going to do is be sat at your desk thinking about food and how hungry you are, then, you know, you might need to reevaluate whether you wanted to try kind of like the 16-8 or even like bigger window with regard to like the one meal a day. And it might work, it might not, but your circumstances. So my circumstances, I was thrown into it, but it worked for me, and I was good with it.
And even with the 16-8, they've done experiments with that. And again, in that 16 hours, all you do is drink water. So what they've found with people is they didn't actually even change their diet. They kept them on the standard American diet, and the majority of people lost weight because now, again, calorically, you're going to be restricted. Also, other people's nasty little bad habits of sitting in front of the TV, eating popcorn, chips, garbage, and drinking sugary drinks has gone because in that 16 hours, all you have is water in between. So you're not doing those little nasty little habits sometimes that kind of creep up on us and put weight on when we don't really think we are.
And that time-restricted eating within like a certain window of time. Again, I was listening to Rhonda Patrick, and I can't remember who she was being interviewed. Either she was being interviewed or she was interviewing somebody. And they say that as soon as you put anything in your mouth, like even like coffee, even if it's black coffee, black tea, that's like when your window of time actually starts. And to be honest, she actually said that there's no conclusive studies that actually say that if you drink black coffee or a black tea, that is when that window of eating actually starts. And it actually looked more favourable that it was okay to do that and okay to have like a black coffee.
Yeah, there's the theory that obviously once you put something in your system like caffeine or food, that your liver starts on the go.
But the coffee didn't show any like negative like effects to say that was the case.
The liver actually probably does kick up into action to deal with what's coming in, but like Karen says, there's no negative deleterious effects. There
was no significant impact or changes. Yeah.
And again, doing the fasting, whether it's 24 hours, whichever one it is, one of the really good things that, or a couple of good things that can come for it is if you have like a small intestinal bacterial overgrowth or something like that, you're going to end up not feeding those little guys. So again, sometimes in the intestines we end up with too many of one sort of bug and not enough of the other. And again, these can overgrow a little bit. So just that caloric restriction, especially if you're restricting yourself for a period of time, that can really help because again, you're starving those little guys out.
And just a little bit of side note, if you do an extended fast before you go and have your blood work done, just, don't confess to the lab technician just how long you've been fasting because they don't like that. They're not happy.
She didn't find it funny.
No, she didn't.
So balancing that gut can really help. And again, if you've got those conditions, as I say, it's not the be-all and end-all cure, but if you are kind of abstaining from food for a longer period of time, it can sometimes help that out. And the other thing, again, we've spoke on a podcast, and we did a podcast completely on inflammation. And again, how inflammation is the root cause of all disease. And our biggest exposure to the outside world, you'd think it was through your skin and things, but it isn't. It's actually with what we eat. And in your intestines area, that 75% of your immune system is in that intestinal area. Why? Because again, that's our largest interaction with the world. If you think of us like a donut, so we've got a hole from the front to the back. So anything that's in the hole, so if you got a donut, put it on the kitchen counter, and then you placed a coin or something in the middle of that donut, that is not actually part of the donut. It's just in the middle of the donut. So any food that you eat before it's absorbed through your intestinal wall is exactly the same. It's inside you, but it's not part of you. And again, foods have bacteria and all sorts of different things all over them, pathogens and things. So your immune system has to deal with that. And one of our biggest sources of inflammation is from the food we eat. So again, if you're not eating, again, for a period of time, then there's a natural reduction in that inflammation because there's a natural reduction in that interaction with the outside world. Also, you're giving your body a little bit of a rest. So, I mean, if you're eating 5-6 meals a day, the insulin's being constantly pumped. Your pancreas is constantly working. Your liver's constantly on the go. Your stomach's constantly on the go. So, to give those things a little bit of a rest, I mean, it is not necessarily the worst thing in the world, and let them kind of take a little bit of a break.
So I hope we've given you some food for thought, no pun intended.
Or no food for thought if it's fasting.
No food for thought if it is fasting. And I'd say it can be just slightly extended, just like you said, like resting the body or...
The last good point, actually, is your grocery bills go down.
True, yeah.
Who knew?
Yeah, groceries. Like, you're not spending as much money on food.
I think with that, we'll wrap it up and we'll see you next time.
That's all we have time for right now, but we do hope that you join us for our next show. And if you want to contribute to an upcoming show by suggesting a topic that you would like us to discuss in more detail, then hop over to our website, healthyhalfhourpodcast.com, subscribe to our podcast and submit your suggestions. The Healthy Half Hour Podcast was brought to you by the 7 Day Shred, and don't forget to share our details with your friends and review our show. Until next time, thanks for listening.